The commitment then is not to just drawing numbers, but it is to getting God's presence. And when God shows up, then healing is the secondary consequence of God's presence, and people are the secondary consequence of God's presence. It is first to invite Him. And so, this is what they encourage them with. Watch what he says. They strengthen the souls of the disciples, exhorting them to continue in the faith, and saying, now watch, he exhorts them to continue in the faith. To continue in the faith. And faith there is living. When he says to continue in the faith, he means to continue in the ongoing life of what you have experienced. To not decrease, but to increase. That means that the zeal, do you all remember? Let me quickly go back for a day before, and I'll conclude right here, but listen. Do you remember when you first got saved? Do you remember the passion and the price you were? Let's deal with that, because when I first got saved, and I look at my life sometimes and I wonder, God, have I really increased? Have I continued in the faith, or have I somewhere along the line lost it? Because I remember when it was time, when I got saved, that we didn't look, I didn't look at my clock, and that I remember how people would go home, but there was a select group of young folks that would still be in the corner shouting and praying. Oh, yeah. And I remember that when we didn't have enough money to get to some of the conferences or to the conventions, how all of us would put our little money together and put it in the car and then pray over the gas tank to go hear Evangelist Locke when she was still an evangelist and had 2 puffs on both sides of her head, when Noel Jones was still just a district elder before. But we'd go to hear these men and women of God and pray over the car. And sometimes we would so be listening to the tape that we just heard them preach, put the tape in after they got to preaching. We'd have to pull the car over. Get out and shout. Get back in the car so we can go now. We were so passive. Do you remember the time when you came early and left late? Do you remember the time when whatever you had in your pocket you gave crazy and went to school to get your little money for your books and couldn't buy your books because you gave them in a special offering? Do you remember the time when you used to speak to Him and when they said pray you'd fall on your face? When was the last time tears filled your eyes as you stood in His presence? Do you remember when you came and they told you, take off your makeup, so you did, and don't wear pants, so you did, and don't have open-toe shoes, and you did, and don't watch TV, and you didn't, and don't go to the movies, and you didn't. And even though none of those things have anything to do with salvation today, we have learned that was a bunch of junk. But we were so in love with Him that whatever you told us to do, we did it. Now, if you try to tell somebody, baby, can you just come a few minutes early? But look, I don't know about you. You can be here all day, but I got a family to take care of. And you look at coming on. Do you remember when salvation was the consuming desire of your life, and it was all you knew and you longed for and lived for and desired Him more than anything, and whatever He required, it's what you wanted from Him. When you used to pray and get in His presence at home and pray before you go to bed, but now you're so busy trying to pay for the car and the house that when you come home from working the 2 jobs to pay for the house, that you got more bedrooms than you know what to do with in the car that's bigger than you know what to do with. Now you just fall asleep without getting in His presence, and your mind is so worked. Now you got cable with 300 channels and ain't nothing on all of them. You flipping through them, but can't open the Bible to read a couple of His Psalms and a few scriptures. From what has happened to us that we have become so consumed because we have forgot to pray, and now when trouble comes, people backslide, leave the church, walk out, and leave us stuck. Watch it. And I'm finishing with this. Watch what he says. This is what we are supposed to encourage him with. And he says this: exhorting them to continue in the faith, and saying this, that we through much tribulation. Now remember what Paul is speaking from his experience, and what he's telling you is what he knows for his own life. You can't be 25 years in ministry and not have some keys. See, y'all need to stop treating it like it's just a motivational seminar. When you understand that it is through the foolishness of preaching that men might be saved. And if you begin to value what God says in your house, He will give you the keys to not become prey to the enemy. Watch now. That we through much tribulation can enter the kingdom of God. There is a kingdom there. That means I'm saved, but I don't have everything. There are dimensions to God's kingdom, Pastor. There are dimensions to God's kingdom, First Lady. There are dimensions to God's kingdom that we have not yet attained, elders and deacons. Listen to me. And in order for me to get it, in order for me to get what God has, I have got to understand its worth. So God does not give me anything free. Right. Because what is free, I do not value. See, as long as you are paying for your kids' sneakers,
and you telling the truth,
and their jeans, as long as you buying their Evisu, putting their Nikes or Bapes